David Chen was elbow-deep in the neural pathways of a crystalline organism that shouldn't exist when his wife called to tell him she'd murdered 3 government agents. Well, not exactly murdered. Elena had always been precise with her language, even when discussing homicide. "They came for Zoe," she said, her voice crackling through the quantum comm link that connected the research station Kepler's dream to Proxima 7. Said she tested positive for something called quantum cognitive resonance. "Apparently our daughter can touch spacetime with her mind, David. Isn't that fascinating?" The way she said "fascinating" made David's blood freeze. Elena Chen was many things: brilliant xenobotanist, devoted mother, maker of the galaxy's best synthetic coffee, but she was not someone who found violence fascinating. She cried when they had to relocate aggressive fungal colonies. She once spent 3 days nursing a dying silicon-based butterfly equivalent back to health. "Elena, slow down. What happened to the agents?" "Oh, they're not dead." "Well, 2 aren't dead. The 3rd one might be experiencing some neural cascade issues, but that's really more of a temporary inconvenience than a permanent condition." David set down his neural probe and activated the privacy field around his lab station. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, the binary stars of the Kepler system painted everything in shifting shades of amber and crimson. Beautiful, but right now it felt like looking at the universe through a filter of blood. "You need to call the Hegemony liaison office. Explain that there was a misunderstanding. David." Elena's voice cut through his panic like a plasma cutter through tissue paper. "Do you remember what I told you about my childhood? You said you grew up on Europa Station. Your parents were hydroponics engineers." I lied. The words hung in the recycled air of his lab like a toxic gas. David found himself checking the atmospheric readings on his wrist display, some primitive part of his brain convinced that oxygen levels had suddenly dropped. "I lied about a lot of things," Elena continued, her voice taking on a quality he'd never heard before. "Clinical. Professional. Terrifying. But I never lied about loving you. Or Zoe. Everything I've done for the past 10 years has been real, David. The woman you married, the mother of your child, that's who I chose to become." "Elena, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. Because the people who took our daughter. They should be absolutely terrified." The comm line went dead. David stared at the quantum relay panel, its soft blue glow suddenly seeming malevolent rather than comforting. He tried calling back. Comm error. He tried the emergency channels. Comm error. He tried the Hegemony's public information network, which should have been impossible to block. Comm error. Elena had just made their entire colony world go dark. The next 18 hours passed in a haze of growing dread and administrative incompetence. The Hegemony's Child Assessment Division was apparently a real thing, though David had never heard of it despite his government clearance level. Quantum cognitive resonance was also real, though the technical specifications were classified so far above his pay grade that even asking about them triggered automated security flags. What David could piece together from the bureaucratic breadcrumbs was this: approximately 1 in 50 million human children showed signs of being able to directly interface with quantum fields through consciousness alone. These children were identified through standardized testing that had been rolled out across all human colonies 5 years ago, disguised as routine cognitive development assessments. Zoe had scored in the 99th percentile. The Hegemony wanted to train her. For what, exactly, remained classified, but David's xenobiology background let him read between the lines. Quantum consciousness meant quantum manipulation. Quantum manipulation meant weapons. Weapons that could alter spacetime itself. They wanted to turn his 8-year-old daughter into a living superweapon. And Elena, gentle, plant-loving Elena who wouldn't harm a sentient mushroom, had apparently decided that wasn't going to happen. The first news report started filtering through the quantum net on the second day. Terrorist attack on Proxima 7 Colony Administration Center. 3 Hegemony agents hospitalized following encounter with domestic extremist. Colony-wide communication blackout continues as authorities investigate security breach. Domestic extremist. David almost laughed. Elena couldn't even kill the aphid-like pests that occasionally invaded their greenhouse. She'd developed a humane relocation protocol instead. But then the casualty reports started coming in, and David stopped laughing. Elena hadn't just taken out 3 agents. She'd systematically dismantled the colony's entire security network. Traffic control systems had been reprogrammed to create gridlock around government buildings. The orbital defense platform had experienced a cascade failure in its targeting systems. The local Hegemony garrison's armory had suffered what officials called an unfortunate accident involving the ammunition storage protocols. It was surgical. It was comprehensive. It was absolutely, terrifyingly professional. And according to the classified reports David wasn't supposed to be able to access but somehow could, Elena had done all of this while carrying a sleeping 8-year-old girl in her arms. David's hands shook as he read the final line of the intelligence briefing. Subject displays combat capabilities consistent with Hegemony special operations training. Recommend extreme caution in pursuit operations. Special operations. Elena had been a government assassin. The woman who sang lullabies to their daughter, who spent hours explaining the symbiotic relationships between various plant species, who cried during sad movies, she'd been trained to kill people. Professional. And now she was using those skills to protect their child. David's comm system chimed with an incoming priority message. His hands were shaking so badly he almost couldn't accept the transmission. Elena's face appeared on the holographic display, but it wasn't the Elena he knew. Her expression was calm, focused, predatory. Behind her, he could see what looked like the interior of a stolen transport ship. "Hello, darling," she said, and her voice was warm honey poured over a vibroblade. "I'm going to get our daughter back. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about the kind of galaxy we want her to grow up in." Zoe appeared in the background, apparently unharmed and playing with what looked like a quantum puzzle cube. She waved at the camera. "Hi, Daddy. Mommy says we're going on an adventure. She says the bad people made a mistake when they tried to take me away from you both." Elena's smile could have frozen solar plasma. "The bad people made several mistakes, actually. But don't worry, David. Mommy's going to fix everything." The transmission ended, leaving David alone with the terrible understanding that the galaxy's most dangerous predator wasn't some alien horror or artificial intelligence. It was a human mother who'd been told she couldn't protect her child. The next transmission came 12 hours later, and it wasn't from Elena. Commander Vale Restrepo of the Hegemony Internal Security Division appeared on David's screen looking like someone had fed him through a recycling processor. His usually pristine uniform was torn, his left arm was in a medical brace, and there was a tick in his left eye that suggested he'd recently experienced something that fundamentally challenged his worldview. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk." David had spent those 12 hours researching everything he could find about his wife's apparent former career. The problem was that everything he found had been classified, redacted, or simply deleted from the quantum net. Elena Chen, according to official records, had never existed before she'd married him 10 years ago. Which meant Elena Chen had been very, very good at her job. "Commander, if you're calling to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Restrepo laughed, and the sound had an edge of hysteria to it. "Dr. Chen, your wife just walked through our most secure facility like it was made of tissue paper. She didn't negotiate. She didn't make demands. She simply informed our people that she was taking her daughter home, and that anyone who tried to stop her would experience what she called immediate career discontinuation." "Is Zoe safe?" "Your daughter is fine. More than fine, actually. Do you know what she did while your wife was systematically dismantling our security protocols?" David waited. "She played hopscotch. In a containment field designed to hold Class A psychic anomalies. The field kept fluctuating in response to her emotional state, and she thought it was a game. She's been treating her quantum cognitive abilities like a toy, Dr. Chen. A toy that can bend reality. The implications hit David like a meteor strike. If Zoe could unconsciously manipulate quantum fields while playing children's games, what could she do if she ever became truly frightened? Or angry? The Hegemony maintains the child assessment program because children like your daughter represent existential threats if they're not properly trained, Restrepo continued. We're not the villains here, Dr. Chen. We're trying to prevent 8-year-olds from accidentally tearing holes in spacetime. And Elena knows this? Restrepo's laugh was bitter. Your wife wrote half the protocols we use for managing quantum-capable individuals. Agent designation Eclipse. She specialized in what we called behavioral modification through applied consequences for targets who posed threats to civilian populations. Agent Eclipse. David felt something cold settle in his stomach. Elena had been an assassin who specialized in killing people like their own daughter. She volunteered for memory suppression 8 years ago, Restrepo explained. Said she wanted out. Said she'd found something worth living for instead of just surviving. The process should have been permanent, but apparently maternal instinct is stronger than neurochemical programming. David's comm system chimed with another incoming transmission. Elena's face appeared on a split screen next to Restrepo's, and the contrast was jarring. The commander looked like he'd been through a war. Elena looked like she'd just finished a pleasant afternoon gardening. Hello, David. Commander Restrepo. Elena's voice was pleasant, conversational. I hope you two are having a productive discussion about Zoe's future educational opportunities. Elena, David said carefully. Commander Restrepo was explaining the reasoning behind the assessment program. Oh, I'm familiar with the reasoning. I helped develop it. Elena smiled, and David realized he'd never seen her smile quite like that before. It was the expression of someone who knew exactly how dangerous they were and found it amusing rather than troubling. The problem isn't the reasoning, gentlemen. The problem is the assumption that my daughter needs to be taken away from her family to be properly managed. The statistical analysis clearly shows, Restrepo began. The statistical analysis shows that quantum-capable children raised in institutional environments have a 17% higher rate of psychological instability, Elena interrupted smoothly. Children raised in stable family environments with proper support systems show significantly better outcomes. I should know. I compiled those statistics. Restrepo's eye twitched faster. Agent Eclipse, your current actions have demonstrated exactly why the memory suppression protocols exist. You've caused billions of credits in damage, violated at least 47 articles of hegemony law, and traumatized 3 agents who were simply doing their jobs. Oh, I haven't traumatized anyone yet, Elena said pleasantly. But the day is young. David watched this exchange with growing fascination and horror. This wasn't a negotiation. This was Elena explaining to a government official why she was about to win an argument that the official didn't even realize he was having. What do you want? Restrepo asked finally. I want my daughter to grow up in a world where she doesn't have to choose between using her abilities and having a family, Elena said. I want her to learn control from people who love her, not from people who see her as a potential weapon. And I want the hegemony to update its policies regarding quantum-capable minors to reflect actual best practices rather than administrative convenience. And if we refuse? Elena's smile widened. Commander, do you know what the maximum range is for quantum cognitive manipulation? Restrepo went very pale. Because I do. And more importantly, my daughter is starting to figure it out too. Yesterday she asked me why the bad men wanted to take her away from mommy and daddy. When I explained that some people were afraid of her special abilities, she asked if she could make the afraid people go away. David felt the blood drain from his face. Elena, please tell me you didn't. Of course not. I explained that we don't make people go away just because they're afraid. We help them understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. Elena's expression turned serious for the first time in the conversation. But Zoe is 8 years old, David. 8-year-olds don't always make the most nuanced ethical decisions. Especially when they think their family is being threatened. The implications hung in the recycled air like a toxic cloud. A quantum-capable child who felt genuinely threatened might not limit herself to making the scary people go away. She might decide to make all the potentially scary people go away. Permanently. What are you proposing? Restrepo asked quietly. Supervised home education with regular progress assessments. Psychological support provided by qualified professionals who understand both quantum cognition and child development. And a new policy framework that prioritizes family stability over institutional control. And in exchange, the galaxy gets a well-adjusted young woman who can manipulate spacetime itself and who's been raised to believe that her abilities should be used to help people rather than hurt them. Elena paused. Also, I promise not to finish what I started with your orbital defense network. Restrepo closed his eyes. Agent Eclipse, are you threatening the entire Proxima system? Commander, I'm offering to save it. David realized he was holding his breath. The woman on his screen was simultaneously the most terrifying person he'd ever encountered and the most devoted mother in known space. She'd broken laws, destroyed property, and traumatized government agents. She'd also sacrificed her own carefully constructed peaceful life to protect their daughter's right to have a childhood. I need to make some calls, Restrepo said finally. Of course. Take your time. Zoe and I will be at home when you're ready to discuss the new educational framework. Elena's expression softened slightly. David, I'll see you when you get back from the station. We have a lot to talk about. The transmission ended, leaving David alone with the stunning realization that his wife had just successfully negotiated with one of the most powerful organizations in human space. And she'd done it while making them believe it was their idea. 3 days later, David stood in their greenhouse on Proxima 7, watching Elena teach Zoe how to encourage quantum-sensitive orchids to bloom by gently manipulating their molecular structure. Mother and daughter worked together in perfect harmony, Elena's hands guiding Zoe's as they coaxed impossible colors from ordinary flowers. Daddy, look! Zoe called out, holding up an orchid that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Mommy taught me how to ask the flowers what they want to become. David smiled, though part of him wondered if he'd ever stop being slightly terrified of his own family. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Elena looked up at him, and for a moment she was just his wife again. The woman who sang off-key in the shower, who cried during sad movies, who made the galaxy's best synthetic coffee. Any regrets? She asked quietly. David considered the question. His wife was a former government assassin who'd recently demonstrated that she could single-handedly destabilize star systems when sufficiently motivated. His daughter could potentially reshape reality with a stray thought. Their peaceful life had been permanently shattered by the revelation that some secrets were too big to stay buried forever. Only one, he said finally. Elena raised an eyebrow. I wish you'd told me sooner that you used to be the galaxy's most dangerous person. It would have made parent-teacher conferences a lot more interesting. Elena laughed, and the sound was pure music. In the end, David thought, maybe the most dangerous predator in the galaxy wasn't a human mother defending her child. Maybe it was a human family that refused to be separated.